Are you absolutely sure you want to do this? Daniel's voice sounded beside me as we watched Stella's brightly lit mansion from the parking lot. Luxury cars were lined up along the circular driveway, and through the massive windows, we could see the silhouettes of half of Nashville, or at least everyone my sister deemed important enough to attend her 35th birthday party. I've never been more sure of anything in my life, I replied, surprisingly calm despite my heart pounding against my ribs. It was a lie, of course. I had been just as sure when I opened Roots and Honey, when I poured all my savings, my heart, and my soul into a restaurant that lasted exactly 7 months and 2 weeks before the rumors killed it. The rumors my own sister had spread. Remember, Daniel said, adjusting the sleek blazer that emphasized his broad shoulders, we're not here for revenge. Of course not, I agreed, though a small part of me, the part that still woke up in the middle of the night remembering the day I had to shut my restaurant's doors, vehemently disagreed. I adjusted my dress, a simple but flawless navy blue piece that had cost more than I could afford, and walked beside Daniel Rivera, celebrity chef and now my business partner, toward Stella's mansion entrance. The security guard at the door checked the list, his eyes widening slightly when he recognized Daniel. If he was surprised to see me at the event, he was professional enough not to show it. Sage! My mother's artificially cheerful voice greeted us in the foyer. You came, and you brought a... Her voice faltered as she finally registered who was beside me. Oh my God, you're Daniel Rivera. Daniel smiled with that signature charm that won over millions of viewers every week. Mrs. Lawson, it's a pleasure to meet you. Sage talks about you all the time. Another lie. I'd barely mentioned my family in the last 12 months. The murmurs had already started as we made our way through the main hall. Nashville wasn't that big, especially not in Stella's social circle, and Daniel Rivera's presence, a judge, on the country's most watched cooking show, was the equivalent of an A-list celebrity showing up. And then, like a perfectly choreographed scene, the crowd parted and there she was, Stella, stunning in a white dress that probably cost more than 3 months of my old rent, holding a champagne glass and mid-laugh, which froze on her lips when she saw us. For a second, a single, precious second that I would replay in tough times, I saw pure terror in her eyes. Sage? She practically choked out my name, her gaze darting frantically between me and Daniel. And, Mr. Rivera, what an incredible surprise. Happy birthday, Stella, I replied with a calm smile. I hope you don't mind that I brought my business partner. Daniel, this is my sister Stella. Partner? The word came out as a squeak. Daniel? And I are opening Essência next month, I explained, as casually as if I were commenting on the weather. I thought you'd like to be one of the first to know, considering your interest in my culinary career. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. To a casual observer, it was just one sister introducing a notable guest. But to everyone who knew our story, and thanks to Stella's blog and the subsequent public fallout, plenty did, this was the most dramatic scene Nashville had witnessed off the Grand Ole Opry stage. I'm looking forward to getting to know Sage's family better, Daniel commented softly, completely at ease in the center of the tension he'd helped create, especially after everything that happened last year. In that exact moment, I knew it had all been worth it. Not for the shock or humiliation on Stella's face, but for the feeling of finally reclaiming something she had tried to take from me permanently, my identity as a chef. As Stella struggled to regain her composure, I couldn't help but think about how we got to this moment. To truly understand what it meant to be standing here, we need to go back to when everything first began to fall apart. 18 months earlier, Raíces and Mel was the talk of the town in Nashville. It wasn't the biggest restaurant or the fanciest, but there was something special about that space I had transformed from an old warehouse in Germantown. This heritage tomato salad with pickled strawberries and smoked goat cheese is a symphony of contrasts, wrote the Tennessean's food critic. Chef Sage Lawson understands that true culinary sophistication doesn't come from elaborate techniques, but from a deep respect for ingredients. For an entire year, I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. Every dish that left my kitchen was an expression of who I was, someone who had grown up quietly in a loud family, who had learned to communicate not with words, but with flavors. My team was small, but dedicated. Mason as sommelier, Helena as sous chef, and a line crew who treated every service like a sacred mission. We had a months-long wait list for Saturday reservations, and chefs from Atlanta and even Chicago had started making pilgrimages to try our food. That's when Owen Fletcher, the feared food critic whose column was read by every influential person in the Southeast, booked a table. The ultimate recognition that could put Raíces and Mel on the national map, and that's precisely when the rumors started. At first, it was just stray comments on online review pages, reports of customers allegedly finding hair in their food, complaints about slow service, hints at questionable hygiene practices, things that occasionally happen in any restaurant, but suddenly they were popping up with alarming frequency. Then came more specific posts in local Facebook groups. Someone had heard we used frozen ingredients while claiming they were fresh. Another person knew someone who got sick after eating at Raíces and Mel. "I don't get it," I told Helena one night after service as we went through yet another wave of negative reviews. Half of these complaints mention dishes that aren't even on our menu. People lying on the internet? Shocking. Mason tried to joke, but the worry in his eyes betrayed the seriousness of it all. The effect was immediate and devastating. Reservations started getting canceled, regular customers vanished, local suppliers concerned about their own reputations began questioning their association with us. In desperation, I invited health inspectors for surprise visits. I implemented open kitchen policies. I even published the invoices from all our local vendors to prove where our ingredients came from. None of it worked. Once the seed of doubt had been planted, it grew ruthlessly. "Maybe we should call Stella," my mom suggested over the phone after hearing the growing panic in my voice. She understands social media and public image. I'm sure she could help undo some of these rumors. Reluctantly, our relationship had always been complicated, even on good days. I agreed. The next day, Stella showed up at the empty restaurant, impeccable in her designer outfit as she scanned the space with a look that felt simultaneously sympathetic and satisfied. "It's really a shame," she said, snapping photos for her blog while I explained the situation. "It takes years to build a reputation, but to destroy it, that can happen overnight." There was something in the way she said it that sent a chill down my spine. "I can make a few supportive posts," she offered. "But honestly, Sage, once those stories start circulating, well, maybe it's time to consider a completely new concept." She spoke so casually about the end of my dream that I was momentarily stunned. Before I could respond, Mason burst into the room, his face a mask of restrained fury. "Sage, I need to talk to you. In private. Now." In the small back office, Mason connected his phone to the computer and played a recording that would change everything. Finally put the pretentious little sister in her place. Stella's voice was slightly slurred but unmistakable. A few fake reviews strategically posted, a couple of messages to my contacts in food criticism. "You should have seen her face when the reservations started getting canceled." A woman's voice responded with a laugh. "Isn't that kind of cruel?" "I mean, it's her business." "Please," Stella replied with disdain. "She spends years as a glorified assistant in other people's restaurants, then suddenly thinks she's a big-time chef? While I've been building my brand as an influencer for years, that's not how it works. Some people need to learn their place." I paused the recording, my hands trembling. Where did you get this?" "Hermitage Bar last night," Mason answered, the anger visible on his usually calm face. I recognized her voice right away. She was bragging to some friends after a few martinis. I walked back to the main room where Stella patiently waited, fiddling with her phone. I looked at her, my own sister, as if I were seeing her for the first time. "It was you," I said simply. "You spread the rumors. You're destroying my restaurant on purpose." Stella looked up, momentarily surprised, then her face changed. A mask of concern slipped away, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. "Mason's got a good ear, doesn't he?" she said, calmly putting her phone away. "Should have figured he'd be a problem." "Why?" The question came out almost choked. "She's your own blood, Stella." "Blood?" She laughed, rising to face me. "That means nothing in the real world, Sage. You know what does? Work, dedication, Years of building a presence, making connections, and then you just show up with a few recipes and suddenly you're Nashville's new darling? The quiet little sister outshining the family star? She shook her head in disgust. You never deserved to succeed. The words hit like physical blows. It wasn't just the cruelty, it was the absolute conviction in her voice. She truly believed what she was saying. You hate me that much? I asked, unable to fully grasp what was happening. Stella adjusted her purse on her shoulder, her expression indifferent. It's not hate, Sage. It's the natural order being restored. She walked toward the door, then paused. If it's any consolation, your food was good, just not as good as you thought. Owen Fletcher published his review a week later. It was the final nail in the Raíces and Mel coffin. While the dishes show technical competence and ambition, he wrote, it's impossible to ignore the persistent rumors of questionable practices behind the scenes. A meal, no matter how flavorful, shouldn't come with a side of unease. I read those words sitting alone in the empty restaurant. Just 3 months earlier, we had a full house every night. Now the phones barely rang, except for cancellations. Helena resigned the next morning, apologizing profusely, but explaining she needed to think about her career. Other staff members soon followed. Only Mason remained, though we both knew it was just a matter of time. I exposed Stella, I told him, staring at the empty tables. I sent the recording to everyone I know, posted it on every platform. And nothing. A few followers dropped her, but most just think it's a silly sister feud. After everything she did, she just moves on. And what does your mom say? Mason asked gently. I let out a bitter laugh. That Stella always had a silly rivalry? With me, but she's sure she didn't mean to cause so much harm. And that maybe I should have been more careful with my reputation. Mason placed a hand on my shoulder. This is so unfair. It's the story of my life, I replied, even though I had never put those feelings into words before. Stella was always the sun in our little family system, and I was just a distant planet orbiting the same star. 2. Weeks later, I taped the sign to the door, permanently closed. I sold kitchen equipment to cover part of the debt. I handed the keys to the landlord, who at least had the decency to look genuinely sad as he accepted my final check. That same day, I had to leave my apartment, unable to afford rent with no income. I moved into a tiny loft above an antique store on the less desirable side of Nashville. Everything I could manage while trying to rebuild some kind of life from the ashes of my dream. To survive, I took the only job I could find, preparing meals at a local daycare. The pay was a fraction of what I used to earn, the kitchen was basic, and the menu was limited by tight budgets and kids' picky tastes. But at least I was still cooking. In the first few weeks after closing, I compulsively checked Stella's social media, torturing myself with her ongoing success. Photos at glamorous events, partnerships with luxury brands. One post, especially painful, showed her standing in front of the now-closed Raíces and Mel. So sad to see this space empty. Nashville needs exciting new food concepts to fill gaps, like this one. Opportunities for entrepreneurship. Eventually, I stopped looking. It was like pressing on a bruise. It only made the pain worse without helping it heal. Fall turned into winter, and my days fell into a dull routine. Wake up early, make breakfast and lunch for 60 kids, clean, plan the next week's menu with the tiny available budget, return to my cold loft, sleep, repeat. It was on a particularly freezing day in January that my life changed again. I was making mac and cheese, not the gourmet version I used to serve at Raíces and Mel with 4 artisanal cheeses and shaved truffles, but the basic institutional kind for kids, when the daycare director walked into the kitchen with a tall man whose temples were graying. Sage, this is Daniel Rivera. He's interested in our child nutrition program for a piece he's writing. I almost dropped the wooden spoon. Everyone in the culinary world knew Daniel Rivera, celebrity chef, owner of Michelin-starred restaurants in Chicago and LA, and a judge on the most-watched cooking competition show on TV. What on earth was he doing in a daycare in Nashville? "Nice to meet you, Sage," he said, extending a hand. "I hope I'm not interrupting." No, not at all," I stammered, suddenly very aware of my plain uniform stained with sauce. After the director left, Daniel looked around the small kitchen, then back at me with a disconcerting intensity. "I'm not here for a piece on child nutrition," he admitted. "I came to Nashville to visit Raíces and Mel. A colleague at Food and Wine said it was a must." He paused. "When I found out it had closed, I got curious, so I started digging." My stomach sank. "And you found all the rumors?" "Yes." He nodded. "And I also found that's all they were. Rumors, baseless, no proof, and suspicious in their timing and origin." My throat tightened with unexpected emotion. After months of being cast as the villain in the public narrative, hearing someone, especially someone like Daniel Rivera, acknowledge the truth was almost overwhelming. "Why are you really here?" I finally asked. Daniel smiled, gesturing toward the pots on the stove. "I'm here to see what you can do with this." Institutional mac and cheese? Think of it as a challenge. Show me who you are as a chef using only what you've got in this kitchen. For a moment, I felt that old spark, the one that had driven me through years of demanding kitchens, the one that had ignited every service at Raíces and Mel. Without thinking twice, I got to work. Ignoring the daycare's standard recipe, I improvised with the limited ingredients. I added slowly caramelized onions for a layer of complex sweetness. I threw in a pinch of dry mustard for depth, a crunchy topping of herbed breadcrumbs from the daycare's tiny garden, an emulsification technique that turned plain processed cheese into something silky and elegant. Daniel watched silently, occasionally nodding as I worked. When I finally served him a small plate, his expression was unreadable as he took a bite. After what felt like an eternity, he set down his fork. "True talent doesn't vanish with reputation," he declared. "This confirms what I suspected." And what was that? That Nashville lost something precious when your restaurant closed. I felt unexpected tears prick my eyes, blinking rapidly to hold them back. "Thank you. That means a lot." Daniel wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin. "I have a proposal for you. A special episode of my show is being filmed next month. Second chances. Talented chefs who've faced setbacks. I'd like you to be a part of it. Be part of it on your TV show." The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. "But everyone knows what happened with my restaurant." "Exactly," he replied. "And this is your chance to show everyone who you really are. No name at first, just your food speaking for itself." I thought about my current life, the humiliation of public failure, the endless awkward questions like, "Weren't you the one with that restaurant that shut down?" What if I fail again, this time on national television? Daniel looked me straight in the eye. "Then at least it'll be on your own terms, not because of someone else's lies." A week later, I quit the daycare. A month after that, I was on a plane to Los Angeles, terrified and strangely hopeful. The studio was surreal. Bright lights, cameras everywhere, a kitchen better equipped than any I'd ever worked in. As agreed, I wore a hood to hide my identity during the competition. I'd be known only as Chef S until the final reveal. "Don't think about the cameras," Daniel advised before filming began. "Don't think about the other contestants. Just cook your truth." And that's what I did. A 3-course tasting menu that told my story, not with words, but with flavors, textures, and presentation. An appetizer representing my roots. A main course reflecting my downfall. A dessert symbolizing the hope of rebirth. When I finally removed the hood at the end of the episode, after winning over the judges and being declared the winner, the moment was electric. Daniel, who had refused to judge my food due to our prior connection, stood and applauded. "Nashville," he said directly into the camera, "you have an extraordinary chef. It's time to rethink what you believe you know about Sage Lawson." The episode aired 3 months after Raíces and Mel closed. The response was immediate. Emails, messages of support from strangers, even a public retraction from Owen Fletcher admitting he had given undue weight to unverified rumors in his original review. The most surprising, however, was the email from Daniel Rivera that landed in my inbox the morning after the broadcast. I have an idea for a completely new concept in Nashville. Not a traditional restaurant, something more personal, more rumor-proof. Would you be open to discussing a possible partnership? Sitting in my tiny loft, I stared at those words for a long time. A partnership with Daniel Rivera would be more than a second chance. It would be a complete reimagining of what was possible. And though I tried to push the thought away, part of me immediately wondered, what would Stella say about this? It's not going to be a traditional restaurant, Daniel explained as we walked through the empty space, coincidentally just 2 blocks from where Raises and Mel had once stood. I'm envisioning something more experiential. In the weeks following the show's airing, we had met several times to discuss his proposal. What began as a vague idea evolved into a concrete plan, a hybrid concept called Essência, part culinary studio, part intimate dining space, part creative lab. During the day, we offer classes and workshops, I continued, finishing his. Thoughts like we had started to do often. At night, dinners for small groups where we can really engage with the guests. No anonymous reservations, no hidden critics. We build real relationships. Exactly, Daniel agreed, his eyes shining with excitement. We're not just selling food, we're selling connection, authenticity, something rumors can't easily destroy. As the months went by, Essência began to take shape. Daniel split his time between Nashville and his other commitments, bringing in his business knowledge and established reputation. I contributed my culinary creativity and deep understanding of the local market. It was during this time that something unexpected also blossomed, a relationship that went beyond our professional partnership. Hours of planning turned into late dinners. Menu discussions stretched into deep personal conversations. Daniel, 15 years older and with life experiences entirely different from mine, became not just a business partner, but a confidant, a support system, and eventually, something more. You do realize half of Nashville thinks we're sleeping. Together, right? I remarked one day as we finalized the details of our partnership contract. Daniel laughed. Only half? I must be losing my charm. Our relationship remained mostly private, not out of shame, but out of a deliberate choice. To keep our focus on the project, not our personal lives. After what happened with Raises and Mel, I'd learned that the less of my personal life was available for public consumption, the better. As Essência moved forward, my path occasionally crossed with Stella's. Nashville wasn't big enough for us to completely avoid each other. She had lost a few sponsors after the truth about the rumors came out, but she quickly found new brands eager for exposure. Her star might have dimmed slightly, but it was far from extinguished. We didn't speak. When we inevitably crossed paths at events, we kept our distance, like planets in carefully calculated orbits that never collide. My mother tried to intervene a few times. Families should forgive, she insisted during our increasingly rare phone calls. You and Stella were so close as kids. That was a generous revision of history. Stella and I were never close. She was the outgoing star constantly seeking attention. I was the quiet younger sister who found refuge in our grandmother's kitchen. Some things go beyond forgiveness, Mom, I replied gently. It wasn't anger I felt anymore, just a sad clarity about the reality of our relationship. 2 weeks before Essência's planned opening, the invitation arrived. Elaborate, printed on heavy paper with gold ink. Join us to celebrate Stella Lawson's 35th birthday. Addressed to me, sent to my new address, with a handwritten note. I hope you can come. Mom. Daniel found me staring at the invitation, unmoving, in our new, not yet open demo kitchen. Does your mom really expect you to go? He asked, reading over my shoulder. She lives in a world where appearances matter more than reality, I replied. Having both daughters at the birthday party would be her version of a happy ending, regardless of what's actually happened between us. And you? Do you want to go? I considered the question seriously. A year ago, the mere thought of facing Stella in a social setting would have filled me with anxiety and barely contained anger. Now, surprisingly, I felt curiosity, almost anthropological, like observing a species in its natural habitat. I think I do, I answered slowly. Not for reconciliation or to make my mom happy, but to close that chapter on my own terms. Daniel studied my face, then slowly smiled. You know, if we're going, we should make a memorable entrance. What do you have in mind? Well, as it happens, the party is 3 days before our grand opening. It would be a shame not to use the opportunity for a little public announcement. As he explained his idea, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time when it came to my family. A sense of power. Not the petty kind of power that comes from revenge, but something deeper. The power to write my own story. It's not about humiliating her, I assured Daniel, though part of me secretly admitted that would be a bonus. It's about finally turning the page. Of course, he agreed, eyes gleaming. Absolutely nothing to do with the fact that your new business partner is exactly the person whose endorsement she's been dying to get for her lifestyle blog. Pure coincidence, I replied, genuinely smiling. 3 days before the party, Owen Fletcher published a piece about the upcoming launch of Essência. The article explicitly mentioned the collapse of Raízes and Mel, the rumors that were now known to be false, and ended with a line I read over and over. Some flavors become richer and more complex after going through the fire. Chef Sage Lawson proves the same can be true for chefs. When the day of the party finally arrived, I dressed with deliberate care. Nothing flashy, nothing that screamed, "Look at me." Not Stella's style, not mine. Just an elegant dress that perfectly reflected who I had become. Confident, professional, resilient. Daniel met me at my apartment door, equally polished in his dark blazer. "Ready to close this circle?" he asked, offering his arm. "More than ready," I said, taking it. Now back in the present, I'm standing at Stella's birthday party with Daniel at my side. The tension in the air is almost tangible as she desperately tries to regain control of the situation. "Daniel, it's such an absolute honor to have you here," Stella says, quickly slipping into her charming hostess persona. "I'm a huge fan of your show. In fact, I'm working on a home cooking content series for my blog that I think you'd find fascinating." "Fascinating, I'm sure," Daniel responds politely, his tone professional but laced with an irony only I can detect. "But tonight, I'm here as a guest and Sage's business partner. We've been quite busy getting everything ready for the launch of Essência." "Essência?" one of the nearby guests asks, a man I recognize as the editor of a local magazine. "Is that the new spot everyone's been buzzing about?" "It's not exactly a restaurant," I reply, finding my voice. "It's a hybrid concept. Culinary studio, intimate dining venue, and educational center. We officially open next week. In fact," Daniel adds, his voice perfectly projected to reach nearby ears, "we're handing out a few exclusive invitations for our pre-opening night, just for a select group of culinary influencers and tastemakers." Suddenly, all eyes at the party seem to be on us, and I see the painful realization in Stella's face. This is exactly the kind of high-level connection she's always tried to cultivate for her blog. The kind of opportunity she would have done anything to secure. And it's happening at her party, just not for her. "How wonderful," she manages to say, her smile never faltering even though her eyes tell a different story. "We'll have to talk more about this. But first, I must attend to my other guests. Please, make yourselves at home." As Stella walks away, I notice my mother watching from across the room, her expression a mix of confusion and what looks almost like admiration. The next 2 hours feel surreal. Daniel and I become the unintentional center of attention, with guests flocking toward us, eager to hear about Essência, to share their love for Daniel's work, or to mention how they always knew. The rumors about my old restaurant were exaggerated. Ironically, this is exactly the kind of party Stella had planned, only she was supposed to be the center of attention, not her failed little sister. Eventually, inevitably, we're alone. Stella corners me near the bar while Daniel steps away momentarily to take a call. "Impressive move," she says, her voice low so only I can hear. bringing a celebrity to my birthday party just to outshine me. I didn't think you had it in you." "It's not a game, Stella," I reply calmly. "Daniel's my partner. And yes, also my partner. It's real." She studies me with those calculating eyes I know so well. "So, you're back on top. Congrats. Did you come here to rub it in? Your little revenge for me taking down your precious restaurant?" Her question catches me off guard. A year ago, maybe that would have been exactly my motivation. But now, looking at her, my own sister, stunning in her expensive dress, surrounded by people she barely knows, desperately clinging to a carefully crafted image, I feel something unexpected. Pity. "No, Stella. I came here to close this chapter. You tried to take everything from me," I say softly, "but you ended up pushing me exactly where I needed to be, with people who truly value what I have to offer." Something flickers across her expression so fast I almost miss it, a flash of vulnerability, maybe even regret. But it's quickly replaced by her familiar mask. "Always so noble," she scoffs, but the bite in her words sounds dulled, almost rehearsed. "Well, enjoy your little victory while it lasts. Nashville has a short memory when it comes to culinary success." "The difference is, this time I'm not building on sand," I reply. "Not my business, not my relationships." At that moment, our mother approaches, clearly uncomfortable with what looks like a tense conversation between her daughters. "Everything okay over here?" she asks, her polite smile firmly in place. "Perfectly fine," I reply, surprising, even myself by actually meaning it. In fact, I was just inviting Stella to be one of the first to visit Essência once we open, to see what Daniel and I have created. The invitation is genuine, even though I know she'll likely never accept it. It's not a full reconciliation. Some wounds run too deep for that, but maybe a quiet acknowledgement that we're, in some distant way, still connected. My mother looks momentarily stunned by the lack of hostility, then quickly seizes the opportunity. "That would be wonderful. A family night at Sage's new place. I'm sure Stella would love to see what you've built." Stella forces a smile. "Of course, Mom. Can't wait." Our words are hollow, but something real passes between us nonetheless. An unspoken understanding that the dynamic between us has shifted for good. I'm no longer the younger sister in her shadow, no longer the victim of her schemes. I'm her equal, or perhaps something even more unsettling to her, someone who no longer needs the approval or family connections she's always used as currency. Daniel returns, sensing the tension. "Everything all right?" "Yes," I answer, honestly. "Actually, it's great. I think we accomplished what we came here to do." As we get ready to leave, several guests exchange contact information with us, eager to be among the first to experience Essência. My mother walks us to the door, her eyes scanning my face as if she's truly seeing me for the first time in years. "You look different," she observes. "More like yourself." "That's exactly how I feel," I confirm. "This partner of yours," she continues, glancing toward Daniel as he chats with another guest a few feet away. "He seems to really value who you are. It's not every day I see someone look at one of my daughters that way." There's an unspoken acknowledgement in her words that catches me off guard, that maybe, all these years, she saw more of our family dynamics than she ever let on. "Thank you for coming tonight," she adds softly. "It meant a lot, to all of us." As Daniel and I drive back toward downtown, I feel a weight lifting, one I'd carried for so long I'd almost forgotten it was there. "How do you feel?" he asks, his eyes briefly leaving the road to study my face. "Like I finally got back the ingredients of my own life," I reply. "And I'm ready to create something new with them." A week later, I'm standing at the entrance of Essência, watching the line stretch down the block for our opening night. The space is exactly how we imagined it. Open, welcoming, with kitchen stations where guests can watch and interact with us as we prepare their meals. Mason is setting up the wine area, having eagerly accepted our invitation to join the team. Helena has returned too, sheepishly admitting that she missed working with me once she realized the rumors were false. I forgave them both. Some relationships are strong enough to weather storms. Are you ready for this? Daniel asks, adjusting. His apron. More than ready, I reply, looking around at what we've created together. It's not just a culinary establishment, it's a statement. About authenticity, about building something that's rumor-proof, about the power of rising again after a devastating fall. The doors open, and the first guests begin to enter. Among them, surprisingly, I see my mother, alone, looking simultaneously, out of place and determined. I couldn't miss the big night, she explains when I greet her. I wanted to see for myself what you built. As I lead her to one of the best seats in the house, I notice Owen Fletcher sitting quietly in a corner, notebook already in hand. Our eyes meet briefly, and he gives me a respectful nod. Stella didn't show up as expected. But her absence doesn't affect me the way it once would have. This space, this new life I'm building, isn't defined by who isn't here, but by who is. And more importantly, by who I've become through the process. Later that night, when the last guest has left and only our team remains, we raise our glasses in a toast. To second chances, Daniel offers. To truths that can't be erased by lies, I add. To Essência, Mason finishes, and to the chef who should never have been underestimated. As we drink, I think of all the twists that brought me to this moment. The rumors that destroyed my first restaurant. The betrayal that forced me to start from scratch. The unlikely encounter that gave me a second chance. The unexpected love that rose from the ashes. Some say success is the best. Revenge. But I've discovered something deeper. True success isn't about revenge. It's about finally finding your rightful place in the world. A place that no one, not even your own family, can take from you. Because the true essence of who we are isn't found in what others say about us. It's found in what we build, in the lives we touch, and in the truths we hold on to, especially when the world seems determined to break us.